fully support him not being here. So, all right, Brenda, take it away.
Good morning. According to my section of the committee meeting today, we're looking at 2.4.10 and 2.4.12 and 2.4.13. So on 2.4.10 and 12, um, as it relates to myself, it says shall not fail to undertake a full-scale competitive process for the selection of independent auditors pursuant to the most current Government Finance Officers Association recommendation. We are in our final year of audit contract with CLA, and we currently are in the process of our selection process. We do have an RFP on the street for financial services. It's our bid number 26009. We issued that RFP on 11/20. It is actually due tomorrow, the 19th at 10 a.m. It was posted on BidNet, which is where all of our solicitations for the district gets posted. And vendors can sign up through BidNet to receive what we call a push notice, so that anytime a district or anybody else would put some type of solicitation that marries up to what they do in their business, they get a push notice that says that the solicitation is posted. Not a requirement, but it is an option for the vendors to do that. So as I mentioned, we did post that on 11/20. We had a time frame for Q&A, and we answered those questions, and I believe we posted the Q&A response on the 12th of December or the 5th. I can't remember, one of those days. So the Q&A was posted on BidNet as well, with any questions that vendors had in response to that. So it is on the street. It's due tomorrow. We have a selection committee set up to review those responses when we receive them. In our process, we ask that the selection committee or evaluation committee signs a disclosure form that while we're in the audit process, that they will not disclose any information while they're doing their review. And I believe we have scheduled for January 5th to hand out the responses. I'll get those tomorrow. I'll go through the responses, determine if any of the responses are deemed what we call non-responsive, which means that they didn't meet some type of criteria that we put in the RFP. We're missing documents from them or whatever. And then once I have done that review, I'll have those available to hand out to the committee. We're going to do that on the 5th of January. And then I believe we come back on the 12th of January to discuss the results of the scoring. And we'll make a recommendation for an award on January 12th. At
Is there
that
some
point
sort
in
of metric that we're going to have on the committee as we review the, okay.
Yes, we do have a score sheet. And so you'll read the responses and score them according to the score sheet.
Okay.
We ask you to, if you're on the evaluation committee, that you read the response and did they meet the requirements or the details of the RFP. It's hard to tell the evaluation committee members not to compare and contrast, but we really want you to say, did you meet the requirements of the RFP, and score it according to that. So that will be done, and then we'll discuss those scoring results on the 12th of January. Once we have that completed, we'll do what we call an intent to award, and we'll put that information out on BidNet so that all vendors are notified that we have made an intent to award. And then we enter into contract negotiations with the apparent awarded vendor. And that is the process to get this completed. So we're meeting the district policy and requirements to competitively solicit for the auditors. Because of Tabor, we don't write a 5-year contract, but typically we do a 1-year contract with options to renew for 4 years, 4 1-year options based on what we can do under Tabor. So that is how we will write that contract. Michael, you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question. I've not been part of this step of a process before, and I've done some work in past lives with federal government stuff, and they kind of have these buckets of there's best value arrangements and there's also like lowest price technically acceptable contracts. Is this more of a best value, or are we evaluating more of a lowest price technically acceptable type?
It is more of a best value. So we have criteria that we put out there that we asked, or that we told the vendors, here's what we are going to score you on. So price is a excuse me, price is a portion of that evaluation criteria, but it is not the total. So potentially you could award to a vendor that's a higher price because the other criteria behind it supports that price.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So that is how we do the process for auditing, or to get our selection of the auditor. So I think that meets 2.4.10 and 2.4.12. Are there any questions from anybody else about that?
Brenda, I was just curious. You said that you'd posted the FAQ and such. Are you getting a lot of questions? How are the questions? Are they insightful or benign?
I think we received maybe 15 questions, if that many. A lot of them were process questions. There were some questions about how the district does certain things. And then there was a couple of questions about what do we want to see in an auditor? I thought that was kind of a weird question for.
But the answer to that is we don't want to see an auditor.
There you go.
I like that. So, yeah, they were pretty generic, not a lot of, I'm looking at them real quick here. Question about the fees, question about how they respond to the RFP. You know, is the page limit really the page limit? Yes, it is. Should the cost proposal be in a separate document? Then again, like I said, some questions regarding what's the top 3 qualities you're looking for. Also, there was a question that said, why are we issuing this RFP? And that response is because district policy says that we will. Can the predecessor auditor apply? Yes, they can. Some questions about the makeup of our finance team. Are we going to audit remotely or in person? And then some questions about when does the field work begin? So they were pretty generic questions. There was 12 of them that were submitted.
So Brenda, you don't have to tell me who all asked the questions, but does it look like we're going to have a good selection group to?
Well, so Aaron had a little bit of a panic because in BidNet, if a vendor pulls down any of the documents that I attached in BidNet, it shows them as somebody that's looked at the bid. We had 37 people, companies, whatever, look at the solicitation. So Aaron kind of had a panic attack, and he's afraid we're going to get a ton of responses. Just because they looked at the documents does not mean that they will respond. And in some cases, you can tell by the names of the vendor that pulled it down that
they're not.
That's not what they do. So 37 is, pretty wild, but that's how many people looked at the solicitation.
And Robert, we're expecting, sorry, I'm losing my voice all of a sudden.
Michael's having an impact on all of us remotely.
I can't believe Michael got me sick. All right, come on, Michael.
Look, I work at cybersecurity firms, and let me tell you how many jokes have circulated this week because of virus. That I'm infecting the office still just because I've got the flu.
Oh, so we're expecting anywhere from 6 to 9 responses based on just who we know tends to be in the K-12 auditing space and can handle a district our size. So, not to say we won't get some responses from very small firms who we know are not, they're not going to have the staff to be able to handle the size field work that needs to be done and whatnot. But 6 to 9 is what we're ballparking.
Yeah, thank you.
Preferably 4. 4 would be a good number, but just from a review standpoint, right?
Are there other questions on that? Okay, so Carolina, is that
Yeah,
it
so
says
those,
2.4.13, but I'm looking at that thinking that
let me
that
see.
probably does not apply to me.
Let me look at it. Mm, yeah, Gina, do you think that that one would have been something for Aaron or
I pull
you?
it up. Sorry, I didn't pull that folder up.
No, no, it's okay. Sorry.
It's got me on there for the interview too, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Let me read it really quick. Sorry,
Yep.
FAC team.
2.4.13. If not, I can make a note
No,
and
I'm in
we
the
can,
workbook. 2.4.13.
yes.
I don't know anything about
That's
dispersing funds.
that's probably just Aaron's. I don't know
Okay.
why it has.
You want
Not
me
sure
to,
why we would
I'll
have
take Brenda.
Brenda on there.
I'll go ahead and take it out right now. And then do you think we need to reschedule this for the next one or I
I'm
don't,
reading it really quick just to see
yep,
what was reviewed last year. So last year, you guys reviewed the RISC risk documents as it relates to the audit on the process for dispersing funds. And so let me pull that up and I can share my screen. Admittedly, I haven't reviewed these since our audit began in the late spring, early summer. So let me just pull those up and then I can share my screen. Okay. So what I'm sharing with you guys is from our fiscal year 25 audit that just ended June 30th. We haven't updated this document. And I'm going to move screens because I'm going to share the screen we're on right now. Maybe. Sorry, I haven't shared in Zoom in a while. So, Brenda, you probably don't have to stay if you don't want to. You're welcome to stay as always.
Okay. If there's no other questions concerning the audit, I think I will sign off and let you guys finish your meeting.
Awesome. Thanks so much for being here, Brenda.
Thank
Thank
Brenda.
you.
Brenda.
Bye-bye.
Brenda.
Okay. Oh, sorry. I have too many monitors. Well, I only have 2 monitors, but if I put it on the wrong monitor, I can't share it correctly. And my computer is not behaving. Okay. There we go. Share. One. Okay. Can you all see the Excel document?
Yes.
All right.
We-
And is the size good?
Uh, yeah.
If it needs to be bigger, let me know. I can't see what you guys can see. And so,
I can read that. I don't know if the team can read that as well, but I can read it on my.
I can read it. If I can read it, it must be pretty.
am I sharing the workbook and not
You did. I was gonna say, I think it looks like the workbook.
Hers? Okay, not. Sorry, we do not use Zoom very often, and you can tell that I am screen stop share. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I apologize. All right, screen one, share.
It's still the workbook, Gina. Or is it? Hold on.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
see. So it does the top say prepare if client prepared?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, excuse me. Okay, so that's the right document, and I was
Okay.
sharing the right thing all along. So I
Okay.
am less inept than I thought at this technology stuff. All right, so here we go through. This is the transaction processing and internal controls. And I can see right here that we actually prepared this, Brenda and I did last year. And so that's why her name is on there. Could have let Brenda stay. The title of that particular monitoring report had me feeling a little confused myself. So we go through and we describe. And I'm going to give you guys a brief overview, and then we can share this document in the FAC folder so that you all can review it closer if that's what you would like to do. But we go through and we talk about our different policies that we have that go through our requirements for making purchases and then ultimately, obviously, the payments. And so we list out, and you all are familiar, you all might be a little bit familiar with some of these policies. These are our district policies, which are different than the monitoring report policies. Those are the board's policies because we're a policy governance board. So then the board delegates the responsibilities that you all are reviewing to the superintendent and staff. And then within that, we have our district policies that are managed and handled by the district. The board doesn't, they may review and see some of our district policies, but they're not the owners of our district policies. So we have district policy 3300, which is our procurement policies. Our 3310 is our procurement and signature authority. And then competitive requirements 3320, bid protest 3330. We have a requirement to review and make sure that whether vendors that we do not engage in work with vendors who have been suspended and debarred by the federal government. That's really important for our grants. We can get in some trouble there. Our policy on business sponsorships, advertising contracts, and then staff ethics. You guys are familiar with 4130. That's when you review. Excuse me. And so we typically review these policies annually, and a little highlight. Brenda and I are working very closely on all of the procurement policies to align them with our new system, the ERP that we've talked about that we're implementing. So our procurement policies have not really, while we review them annually, we haven't made updates. And some of the recommendations we're going to make is to align our procurement policies with those at the federal level. And so, for example, our signature authority right now, the only two people in the district authorized to sign anything $10,000 or more are myself and the superintendent. And so I'm making a proposal that will have a stair step up with higher amounts that school leaders can sign contracts. That, of course, there's a review process. They're not just signing them. But they'll have the ability to sign some contracts that are $10,000 up to a certain dollar amount. And then their executive director, the chief of academics, and so on will have some signature authority so that it's just not myself and the superintendent, as those leaders tend to have a better pulse and handle on what's going on. Those haven't been changed, and so we're still under that 10,000 limit. Same with our procurement competition requirements. We're looking at some changes to increase to follow federal guidelines. Not changed, but my hope is they'll be changed for June 30th. But we do currently require everyone to follow those district policies, and we do a review to make sure that those are happening. Excuse me. And so we have the list, and I can't see you all. So if, sorry,
Gina.
yeah, thank you, Kelly. Thanks for alerting me. I can't see you guys looking at this.
No problem. I just had a couple of questions on this front. So the first question I had was, when you're talking about vetting vendors and such, is there a nice, cool list out there that y'all can go check, or how do you complete that process?
Debarment process?
Yes.
Yes.
Not debarring, but just checking that they haven't been in that.
That's right. So we can only see if they have been, which is, so we do a negative test. And so there's a website that all government entities use to look up vendors.
Okay.
And if they show up on the list, then we know we can't engage with them. If they don't show up, we literally do a screenshot of the search for that vendor and show that they're not there.
Okay.
That sounds funny because you don't appear if you haven't been suspended or debarred. You do appear if you have, but that is part of our required process when when we're working with a new vendor.
Okay. I was more or less curious if it was like a human research moment, or if there was a list that's provided. So you've got that. Excellent.
There's and if you're interested, I can get that website link and send it to you. I personally haven't done it in so long that I used to be able to rattle it right off, but I can't remember today.
No worries, I trust you. And then the other question that I had was with regard to this change in the signatory limits and such, does the ERP system facilitate this with more adequate controls? Is that why we're able to kind of loosen the strings, if you will?
So yes, and I would say that the controls in place already exist to make sure that the vetting process happens, that if it requires an RFP, if it requires just a informal competitive bid, we already have all of that in place, and that's already being done through workflow. And so by the time it comes to myself or the superintendent, everything has already been vetted. And in my opinion, it's an artificial control having this $10,000 limit, because I'm not going to go through and do all the work that everyone has already done. I'm going through reviewing the steps to make sure it's been done. And somebody in purchasing has already done that before it gets to me. So I think 10,000 is a very small number, and this has probably been in place since the 1900s. And so I think as things cost more, engaging in contracts, it's very rare for us to have contracts under $10,000. So that volume that flows through me is inordinately high. And I think I can't remember where we've landed for our proposal. Again, hasn't been approved, and I may be shut down as I make the recommendation. But the new ERP system will automate that review process so that it goes through a structured workflow. That today it's paper that gets shuffled around. This stack of information goes from the initiator to the next person, to the next person, to the next person, then ultimately to me. And then I'm reviewing that packet. Now in the new system, it will be through a workflow process. We're still early in the implementation phase, so I don't have all the answers to how that's going to look, but I know it will actually rely on some AI, and it can't go to the next person in the workflow until those other pieces are completed. So there will be really good, solid controls in place that are automated and documented through the system, whereas today those are all on paper.
Yep, ERP is good about that. So okay, good deal.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just curious.
Yeah, you're welcome. Does anyone else? Oh,
Yeah,
Robert,
I just,
ask a question?
Tina, I am totally supportive of this. 10,000 is definitely too low. At CU, if I remember correctly, the threshold was 150,000 for approval. Unfortunately, I was the one who had to approve it, and I know how painful that can be. So
Yeah.
I would say go high and trust.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for that support, Robert. I
Call me
can't tell you
Bob.
how
You
grateful
can call
I
me
am
Bob.
for that. Oh, Bob, sorry. I'm really grateful for that support because, as you can imagine, 10,000 in an operation our size,
That's ridiculous.
Carolina is bringing things to me all the time. Can I get your signature? Can I get your signature? And it's like as the CFO, I don't know something more than the chief academic officer or legal counsel or other people. And so Kelly, the piece I'll add to that is the other piece that will help with some help controls is I believe the reason I'm the routing is because then I'm like the final stop of making sure there's budget for it. And our system will be able to do that. And so that will also be another really good improvement.
Gotcha. Okay, sweet.
Awesome.
Tina, I'm sorry. We do have transportation. We have Igor, and I
Here.
think we have, yeah. So I think
I'm going to pause and stop sharing. And so I apologize right now while I'm sharing, I can't see anything.
No,
So I'm
no.
going to stop sharing. And do we have Igor here and
Yes.
Al? Anyone else from transportation?
And Albert. Yes, we have
Yep.
Igor and Albert. Sorry to interrupt, but they're here.
No,
And
I'm so
then,
glad you did.
and then they can, Igor, are you guys ready?
We are. Do we have the slide for our information?
Yeah, let me go ahead and pull it up. I'll share that here in a second.
All right. So while Caroline is doing that, Igor, do you want to introduce yourself and Al?
Absolutely. Good morning. My name is Igor Petrovich. I am the Director of Transportation, and I'll turn it over to Al.
So let me get this going here.
Here, give me a second so that I can share that.
Yes. And I'm Al Francisco. I am the new operations manager and kind of filling in interim for the fleet manager until we get it filled.
Can you guys see that?
Yes.
We're looking at your drive at the moment.
I'm glad it's not just me.
Okay, let's try this again. Drive. It should be easier, right? Monthly meetings. Here we are. And then, okay, let's see if we can do this. Share. Okay, well, oh, maybe this is it. Oh. Are you guys still seeing the drive or the form?
That's it. That's it. Thank you, Caroline.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
So we'll have Al go through the numbers of inspections for you all and then turn it over for any questions as we wrap up our presentation.
Sure. Okay, so as you can see on the form there, it's showing how many we completed on time out of the total inspections. We're sitting at 98% for the year of 24-25. Of the four that related to the four inspections that were late, of the two of them were they were down at the vendor being worked on, and they didn't get back until after the time of their inspection date. But we did not have them driven at all. Once they got back, we did the inspection. The other two were clerical errors. So one of them was in June, and whether it was just, we have two places that we're looking at where inspections are being done for the year. And the lead mechanic and myself, we have something on a board and we kind of communicate with each other. For whatever reason, they got erased off the board. I can't remember how that happened, but we didn't get it in June, but it didn't drive through July. So as soon as we notified or recognized that it was not done, we pulled it in and got it done. So it didn't drive also. The second one was the mechanic forgot to log off of it. It was in the end of the month of June, getting into the week of 4th of July. So when he realized that he did not log off of the inspection itself, because this is kind of the way that our system logs it, I guess. So it really wasn't late in that respect. He had actually done the inspection, but you have to actually sign off and close it. And then it stamps it with that date that you actually closed it. So he had actually had the inspection done prior, but because of our system reporting it July 2nd and not June 3rd, the earlier June date, it showed up late. But it wasn't late. It hadn't been driven. It was in his inspection. It was in his bay. So those are the 4 inspections that were late.
Guys, do you have any questions for Albert or Igor?
Thank you.
And this is what you were wanting to share, right, Al?
Correct.
And I lost you guys. Okay. Any other items that transportation wanted to pass along, share with the FAC?
Nothing at the moment, nothing that stands out.
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here this morning. And I heard today's the last day of school, just a little for the year. So happy last day of school. I hope all the drivers are safe and kids are safe today. So, and then they enjoy a great break.
Yes, and you yourself enjoy a great break to all of you. Happy New Year's
Thank
and Merry
you.
Christmas.
Merry
all.
Christmas.
Take care.
And Gina, Greg is supposed to be here at 9:15. Okay,
Okay.
good. So we have a few minutes. Yep, I can
Yep.
see the, yep,
Am I back to where I was?
yes, yes.
Maybe I cracked the code, y'all. It's going to be a good day. It's going to be a good day. All right. So I did upload this document into the monthly meeting folder for December 18th. So you all should be able to see this when you want to, although I'm not seeing it. Maybe I need to refresh. It is there. Okay. So it is, it's an Excel spreadsheet, but you guys should be able to see it. So again, we provide a listing of people who are allowed to make, not people, but departments. And so basically every department in school within the district is allowed to go through the purchasing expenditure expense tracking process that of course is, I think, reasonable. And then we go through and we describe the purchase authorization process, including how things are routed and who approves, who does the work and whatnot. And so I'm not going to read through that. You all are very welcome to look through this. And then if you have any questions, please reach out to myself or Aaron, and we'll be happy to. And then we talk about when are there exceptions and how do we handle those exceptions. Very excited again for the new ERP system because the workflow in that is going to really, I think, make the entire process more efficient and easier to do with better controls in place. For example, for P cards, they actually in our system will have to do a pre-authorization showing that the purchase was authorized in advance, and there are exceptions for emergency situations. I'm really excited for that. And I had a taste of how that worked at my last district, who is using the same system that we're going on. This talks about who approves again, who can initiate the purchase. And so end users are able to do that. Again, following district policy, and we watch for it closely. And the number of questions I get on a at least weekly basis, testing, do you agree this is following policies? And I will weigh in on that and point people back to the policy. I like to point people to the source itself to ensure they understand the why behind decisions we make. We go through the process of a new vendor setup, and so one of the things I'm really proud of our team, and there's a process to make sure that all of the paperwork is filled out appropriately before that vendor can get added and put into our system, and down to before we'll add. A lot of our vendors do get paid by ACH, and before we will add ACH banking information, we do a verification, an independent verification that we're talking to the right person, so that, you know, we're not going to take an email and change someone's AC or change or add someone's ACH information. We're going to call the number on record of the vendor and reach out to that person independently. We're not going to do it based on them calling us, coming into the office, or sending us any sort of documentation. It's initiated on our end, and our new system will make that even better, where they will follow a link that they'll do it themselves, and really protecting the district to not get scammed and add someone else's information. I'm not sure if Erin has shared that with you, but a couple of our neighbors have been hit hard by those scams, where they were one was in a massive bond project like we are now, and a major vendor on the bond had their information updated, and they sent a large amount of money to not that vendor, but looked like they were paying the vendor, and it was only through a collections call that they learned of the problem. And so it's a real risk, and I'm very proud of our team and the work they do to really mitigate it. That doesn't mean it won't happen, but I think we have good things in place to prevent it. Here we talk about purchasing cards, and so any employee who is recommended by their supervisor, department supervisor, for a need is able to have a card issued. We do an auditing process to ensure folks are following district policy around purchasing card purchases. We take that very seriously, and again, the new system is going to do an even better job with that. And so very, very excited. I know I keep talking about the new system. We're 6 months away from, I guess 7 months away from going live with that, but being in a system that is set up to handle P cards is going to be fantastic. Today, we manage all of that outside of our financial system, and then have to, through a process, pull that information in. So very excited about that. Employee reimbursements, we follow district policy on that, and employees do have to submit their receipts and have approval. We do for travel, we are on a per diem. For food reimbursement, we don't require receipts for those, and that is set by, we use the rate set by the GSA, and so that is a process I'm very happy with, because you don't have the person, if they're choosing to go eat at a restaurant they wouldn't normally eat at, the district isn't necessarily picking up that tab, which is what could happen in the old days when it was a actual receipt reimbursement type of thing. We describe in the document our PO, purchase order activity. We talk about our process around construction in progress, and on the finance side, we have an accountant who works with the business services team to ensure we're accounting for that construction in process CIP appropriately. We've talked about the policies. We This is on, receiving goods. We encourage staff to have as many orders as possible get received at the warehouse. And so we're checking that purchase order against what comes in, and that warehouse staff does a great job with that. And the biggest why, outside of the verification that the goods are received, that we encourage these to come to our warehouse, is to limit the number of trucks at our schools and number of employees who are not district employees needing to gain access to go in and out. And so really to protect the schools from those trucks, especially at the elementary where they don't have a dock, and those bigger purchases, let that be handled by the warehouse. They work with the teams and get those in, but it also does control to make sure we receive the items. And I'm looking at the clock. Did Greg
Gina? Yeah.
join? All
Yep,
right, so
Gina. Yeah, he just
is
did.
there a document that we're sharing
Yes.
for IT?
Yep, it's in the folder. It's called
I'm going to share that.
the Finance and Audit Committee Internal Report, November 2025.
Okay. Hi, Greg. Who is anyone with you, Greg, or is it just you today?
No, just me today. Yep.
Fantastic. I'm opening your file, maybe.
Okay. And I've got it here as well, if that would make sense. But yeah, in case.
Do you want to? Would you prefer sharing?
What I'm happy to do so. Happy to do so.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna find the screen that says stop sharing, and Greg can share. So Greg is our Chief Technology Officer. Thank you so much for being here today, Greg, and I'm gonna go ahead and mute again.
Okay, well, great. Yeah, so thanks so much. And I'm in the process. Let me get over and share this the correct way, then we'll be ready to go. So let's see here. Okay, yeah, so good morning, and thank you so much, everyone who's on the Zoom meeting this morning, for the opportunity to meet with you. I look forward to this meeting every year. We're very grateful for community members who are interested in what's going on at the district and want to better understand the work that's going on here, and then also ask us good questions. So thank you a ton for your time today, and we'll kind of jump into it here. So let's see, I don't use Zoom too often. I want to make sure. It looks like that deck is being shared. Is that correct, Caroline? Is that what you're seeing? Or?
Yes, we can see
I think Greg is showing off, you guys.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, well, no, I honestly don't use Zoom too often. It's like I want to make sure people can see this. So and thanks for that encouragement there, Gina. So all right, so yeah, as Gina mentioned, I'm the Chief Information Technology Officer. I do have to say, by the way, almost every organization I'm aware of has either a Chief Information Officer or a Chief Technology Officer. So I always wonder a little bit if people understand what my title is. Basically, it means I'm the head of the IT department here at the district, and ultimately, my team is responsible for providing technology services on behalf of all of our students and staff, all that kind of stuff. So, all right, and so we're here to talk specifically this morning, obviously, about the asset protection or the internal monitoring report. And there's two elements in there that relate to IT. The first one has to do with essentially uptime of our core systems for the network, and so, or for the district. And as you can see on there, those are the ones that have been identified for this monitoring report. Our student information system, so in other words, Infinite Campus. And my assumption is that if folks are on the call who have students at the district, you're well aware of Infinite Campus, but also our HR and finance system, which is currently PeopleSoft. As you may know, we're in the process of moving to Oracle. And then internet availability, phone systems, our cloud email and office productivity apps. What we mean by that is Google Workspace, so our word processing, spreadsheets, calendaring, and so forth. And since Gina gave me a little bit of a hard time, I will mention Gina is not a fan of Google, but she does her best to go along with the crowd. And then also our identity and access management system. By that, what we mean by that is essentially the software that allows users, so staff and students, to be able to log into the network. If that goes down, people can't get onto the network, and we're kind of in trouble. So those are our core systems. And as you'll notice on there, we've listed the
percentage uptime. So for the monitoring report, the aim is to have all of those core systems available for at least 99% of the time throughout the year. And more specifically, that would be during the school day. So that doesn't include after hours and on weekends. Perry Movic, who is our director of our infrastructure services team, wishes that we did include that in there because that would actually make these uptime percentages slightly higher. But regardless, you can see that in terms of meaning 99% uptime, we met that for the period from, I believe that's July 1st, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. Now, 99% uptime is probably decent, but still there can be outages in there that we can still meet those metrics, and it can be disruptive. But I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. And so this next slide, I've already kind of addressed a couple of the bullet items on there, especially that it's measured during the school day. Now, one of the things that we do is whenever we do have an outage, we track that very carefully. And we actually, if you're a parent, then you got a notification earlier this week about an outage that we had earlier. Let's see, last Thursday, I believe. And especially since this is a public, is being recorded and I believe will be shared publicly, it wouldn't be wise to go into a lot of detail on this, but we did have a lot of those core services that were unavailable for 2 hours and 40 minutes last Thursday, December 11th. And so that included, I'm going to go back to the previous slide, that definitely included our student information system, PeopleSoft, our phone systems, and then also our identity and access management system. And so during that time, those core systems were unavailable. And that was and I would imagine that next year it's quite likely we could still meet those metrics, but that was very disruptive. We spent a significant amount of time talking through understanding what the impact was to schools, what do we communicate to parents and what would be helpful and all that. And it's disruptive. It was disruptive for Gina's team in terms of just being able to get into PeopleSoft, but it was very disruptive for learning in the schools. And we don't feel good about that at all. But also I mentioned on here that we have incident documents that we complete when we do have an outage. And so over the weekend, our team put together a very detailed 6-page incident report regarding what happened. That included what we know about the root cause. It included the timing of the outage. It included communications and also some lessons learned and some recommendations for improving our practices moving forward. And so yesterday actually is when we have our weekly IT leadership team meeting, and we did a thorough deep dive into that document and talk through lessons learned and ways that we can learn from and improve in the future. So realistically, I mean, this happens. I never feel good about an outage. It's very uncomfortable. It's never fun to sit in our emergency operations center and have to report to district leadership and then ultimately to our community that my team has failed the organization during that time when systems go down. The truth is no technology is perfect, that it has 100% uptime. Even organizations like Google, Amazon, and Meta and so forth, with billions of dollars of resources, still have downtime at times. The key thing is, are we learning from our mistakes? Are we getting better? Are we improving the odds of avoiding those mistakes in the future? So, wanted to be
interject. I would not say you're failing the school. These numbers, they look amazing to me. So,
well, you're very kind. You're very kind, and maybe. And also, I need to mention the culture at the district here is wonderful, right? I'm walking into that EOC room and folks are like, "Are you doing okay?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm feeling horrible that school's interrupted right now, but yeah, we're doing our best with the resources we have, and I appreciate that feedback. Thank you, thank you." So we'll also move to the next part, 2.5.6, and here we're talking about the requirement for the district to protect intellectual property, information, and files from loss or significant damage. It probably goes without saying that we're talking about digital intellectual property. That's the part that our IT team is tasked with. And so during that same time frame, July 1 through 2024 through June 30th of 2025, no loss or damage was reported. I think it is important to be fully transparent. None was reported. To the best of our knowledge, we didn't have any loss. You can never say that for sure with an organization the size of ours, but none was reported. And it also, this slide is helpful in terms of giving an awareness of just what we're trying to, the scope of digital services that we're working through. So right here we're talking about 65,500 managed devices. So what we mean by that would be Chromebooks for students, laptops for staff, and then also additional laptops and desktop computers throughout the district for various business operations. As an example, that could include like a PC in a cafeteria that is information is being collected as students go through. So there's about 65,000 devices that we manage and maintain. And then also, just to give you a sense of the type of communication that we're receiving, about 302,000 daily inbound and outbound emails. So by the way, from a cybersecurity perspective, one of the most common ways that an organization is, if there's some sort of integrity breach or not integrity breach, digital breach would be via phishing attacks with email. And we have multiple technology in place to be able to screen those incoming and outgoing emails. And so about 20% of those are identified and blocked and never reach people's inboxes. We also have, on a daily basis, we have about, just under 30 million blocked network attacks. And so if there's anybody on the call who's ever been in our data center, we can see real time on large monitors the attacks, the cyber attacks that are coming from all over the world. A very large percentage of these are automated and informed by AI technologies. And what we also see is that after hours and on holidays, sometimes those numbers will spike to as many as 40 to 50 million attacks per day that our various cybersecurity technologies are blocking. And so also here's some data that we found just recently reported by the Center for Internet Security, or CIS, which is a federal organization. You can see the numbers there that during that 18-month period up until about a year ago this month, there's roughly 16,800 districts. 116 school districts, or just under 1% of them, reported a ransomware attack where an outside nefarious actor was able to hack into a network and then encrypt that technology and attempt to hold districts hostage to pay them money to get access to that data again. And these phishing and social engineering strategies are the most common tools that are currently used to be able to hack into our networks. And so that gives you an idea of kind of what we're up against in terms of preventing the loss of intellectual property information in files from significant damage per policy 2.5.6. And so I've been doing quite a bit of talking there, rattling. I believe, yep, that's the information that I have. I think we have a couple more minutes before the next person comes on. So I'll pause, questions, concerns, those types of things.
Greg,
Great.
again, I just want to say great job. And looking at this slide here, I don't know how you sleep at night.
Hey, thanks so much. On that regard, that we are very fortunate from an IT perspective in that we have had, over the years that I've been here, which is just over a decade, a lot of support from our superintendent and from the board to invest in cybersecurity technology, both in terms of staffing and technology tools. So we are, compared to most districts in the state, we're able to invest more technology in that space. And also really a shout out to Dan Dockendorf, our cybersecurity manager, and he oversees a team of 4 other cybersecurity members of this team, do a lot of really good work to protect us. But he's the one who's really, he really feels the weight of that. He understands the threats better than the rest of us in IT. But thank you for your kind feedback. So.
Greg, we do have, we were talking about on the chat, sorry, about the tab, because we had you as 2.5.4B, but you have 2.5.6. So I'll check with you, and it's probably on my end. I'll make sure that we do have a tab for that if that's the wrong tab. So
You know what? I apologize. I wonder if we have a typo on that. We can.
Yeah, or me. So I'll check with you after that. Members, we do have the information under the 2.4, 5.4. And there is an A and a B. So, but I'll check, and then I'll add a tab if we need to.
Okay.
And Greg, to be clear, I was not poking fun at you. The FAC, all the members will attest I was poking fun at myself.
Okay.
If everyone could nod your head to make it clear. I know I usually am poking fun at you or IT, but I was poking fun at myself.
Today was an outlier, so I appreciate you pointing that out. So,
Thank you. And we do have John Paul on the line if anybody has any other question for Greg. If not, we do have John Paul.
Greg, thanks for being here today.
Hey, thanks to you, Gina, Caroline, everybody else. Appreciate it. It's always fun to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, now before John Paul gets started, I'll just say that from a finance standpoint, we have a couple of statutory requirements that we must do, we shall do. We must adopt a budget, and we must set mill levies so we can tax property tax owners. And the next thing we shall do is we shall have an annual financial audit. And so we have John Paul here to go do an overview then of audit results, which are similar to those that he shared with the board. And welcome John Paul to the show. I think you're on. There we go. We've got you.
Thanks, Aaron. All right, let me.
Hey, John Paul, before you get started, I texted Gene and said you're rocking the old school headphones.
Well, you know, everyone does the Bluetooth now, but I just get nervous that the battery's going to die or the connection's going to go out or whatnot. So yeah, as long as the laptop has the option for the wired, I do that, and it actually fit a little bit better. So I don't know. Maybe one day I'll catch up with everyone else on technology, but for now,
you're not alone, John Paul. You're not alone.
So great. Well, my name is John Paul Chevalier. I know I've presented to the Finance and Audit Committee in the past, but I'm pleased to be able to present the results from the fiscal year 2025 audit. As Aaron mentioned, this is a similar presentation to what was given to the board. I can't remember the exact date, but I believe it was about a month ago. And so happy to be able to kind of present the results. And if there's any questions, comments, discussion items, please feel free to interrupt, and we can, spend more time kind of wherever it makes sense for the committee to pause and kind of discuss anything further. So with that, I'll kind of start with the general overview that we normally give. So we're pleased to be able to say that we were able to issue an unmodified or clean audit opinion for the fiscal year 2025 audit. That's the highest level of audit opinion that the district can receive, and it's really the one that the district should be expecting to receive each year. What that means is that after all of our audit procedures, we believe with reasonable assurance that the financial statements are materially correct. The example that or analogy that I like to use is that the district is the author of the financial statements, and we're the editor of the financials to make sure that everything is materially correct. One thing that I also like to point out with the audit is that the audit is really designed to be able to say whether the financial statements are accurate. So when we kind of say good or bad, really what we're saying is accurate in terms of the actual use of the funds or performance of the district, whether the trajectory of the financial activity is positive or negative. That's really kind of up to management and the board, and as well as the FAC to kind of have that input and make the decision of whether that trajectory is going in, positive, negative, how to interpret the results is really outside of the scope of the audit. We just make sure that the information is accurate and can be relied upon. So that's kind of the overview of the audit report. We do also look at internal controls. So kind of the processes and the structure for how financial activity is recorded, making sure that those are working and designed as they should, though our audit report does not specifically give an opinion over the effectiveness of the internal controls. So we're reviewing it, but the audit report really is designed to be giving that opinion over the financial statements and not specifically over internal controls. So there are a couple of different components within the audit. There's the financial statements, which is what was issued, and that's kind of the 200-ish pages of financial information. That's the majority of the audit procedures are performed over that. And that's what our unmodified or clean audit opinion is issued over. There's also the single audit component, and that's the additional audit procedures that are required anytime an entity receives over $1 million in federal awards. So obviously the district receives significantly more than that. And so one of the requirements is that the external auditors also perform these single audit procedures. That's in process at this time. So the deadline for the financial statement audit was prior to the end of the calendar year. So really by the end of December 31st is when that needed to be submitted to the state. So that's complete. The single audit is required to be completed prior to the end of March. So that timeline is a little bit longer. There were some delays with the federal government. The compliance supplement is the name of the document that's around 1,000 pages long that has almost every federal award and the specific procedures that they want auditors to look at. That normally comes out around May each year, and this year it came out just before Thanksgiving, so quite a bit later than it normally does. So that caused some delays, as well as one of the programs that we're looking at is still in process. We're working with Aaron to get some remaining information. There's just some confidential information that's part of that. So we've been working through kind of the best way of coordinating and transmitting that data, making sure that we're keeping all of the privacy and data protection, kind of following all of that. So that's kind of the one outstanding item at this point. Just to jump ahead of kind of what we'll talk about with the single audit. But at this point, we don't have any findings or concerns with the financial statement audit or the single audit, any that reached the level of a material weakness or a significant deficiency. So those would be the more significant items that would show up within the audit report. We did have a best practice recommendation that does not go into the audit report, but is communicated separately to district management, and we'll be continuing to communicate and discuss with them on kind of following through on that recommendation. But again, nothing that reaches the level of significance or concern to be included in the report, presented to the board, or to the FAC. So that's kind of the big picture overview. I guess I'll pause for a second if there's any questions or comments on kind of the big picture overview. Otherwise, we'll talk a little bit about some of the results that are presented within the financials.
Well, I'll just say congratulations to the staff for doing such a wonderful job, on the district staff for doing such a wonderful job and getting these very good results.
Echo, definitely.
Okay, great. So I will kind of give I realize it's, 100-some pages in the annual comprehensive financial report. I'm not scheduled for nearly long enough to cover every single page individually. And I think I'd probably fall asleep going through all of it. So I'm sure all of you would as well. But did want to give a high-level overview of some of the results, particularly the items that only show up on the annual financial statements. So I realized that The district does a very nice job of monitoring the budget and making sure that kind of that financial activity throughout the year is being presented. Some items only show up on the annual financial statements, really just based on the requirements that are that governmental accounting standards have, as well as some of that information really only needs to be compiled annually. And so anyway, the first item on here, the district presents, like all other Colorado school districts, 2 sets of financial statements, one on what we refer to as the full accrual basis. That's kind of a long-term view of the financial position of the district. So how that's going to differ from the budget is that it's going to include capital assets. So school buses, school buildings, any equipment, those types of items will be shown as assets of the district on these financial statements, whereas those wouldn't be shown on kind of the budgetary basis, since you wouldn't be able to spend those, at least not in their current form, without selling them first. It also includes the district's long-term liabilities, such as bonds, any long-term leases, that type of thing, as well as the net pension liability. I know that's been around now for around a decade. So it's something that I know we've discussed in the past, but it continues to have a significant impact on the district's long-term financial statements that get presented within the annual comprehensive financial report. So if we look here at the district's net position, you can see that the amount is a deficit. So that getting smaller is actually an overall improvement in the district's financial position. So if we look here, it ended close to a deficit of $100 million. If we look at the net pension liability that's required to be presented on the district's financial statements, and that's about a $700 million decrease to that. So when we kind of compare the two, the district would be presenting a much stronger long-term view if the pension liability is excluded. So the net pension liability, so a brief recap, that relates to the district's participation in the defined benefit pension plan that's required to be offered through Colorado PARA. This is kind of their calculation of essentially the unfunded amount. If you were to project out all of the future benefit payments compared to the future amounts coming in, this would be the small percentage of the overall pension plan unfunded amount that's allocated to Adams 12. So that's kind of what that relates to. Even though this is a $700 million liability, it's really kind of more of an informational amount that's presented on the statements. It's not something that the district could repay even if you wanted to and had $700 million laying around that you wanted to give to PARA. You wouldn't be able to do that. This is really more long-term. This is something that will either need to be adjusted through additional contributions by the district, by employees, by the state, or through a reduction of benefits to retirees, something to be able to have the pension plan continue. That's really more of a long-term view, though. Within the next 30 years, PARA is not expected to have a cash shortfall, at least based on their most recent actuarial projections. So this is really more of a very long-term liability in terms of the projection. So I realize spending a lot of time on something that is really more informational, but it's a really significant number. It does kind of drastically impact these big picture financial statements. And again, it really is only presented once a year on the annual financial statement. So wanted to cover that so that you're aware of what's being presented. Again, pretty similar amounts, actually slightly less than what it was last year, but did want to mention that. The
John,
other,
I think that
go ahead.
statement was one of the dumbest statements, Gatsby. They've come out with a lot of dumb statements, but that one was probably one of the dumbest, my opinion.
It does seem like there was maybe some politics behind it in terms of wanting to present some of these long-term views for pension plans. It is difficult when the pension plan is really a separate entity that's required to fund this outside of the control of the district. So it's a challenging statement for sure. And there's a lot of pages on all of the, there's a lot of disclosures that, to be honest, I look at it for a lot of clients every single year, and some of it still goes over my head as, you know, actuarial stuff that, you know, is probably more complicated. And I don't know how someone reading the financials would understand it, but maybe they're smarter than I am. So anyway.
And I would just say, if I could just add, John Paul, that
sure.
of the users of our financial statements, the users who look at this the most, as far as both the net pension liability, OPEB liability, as well as the net position of the district, are the bond rating agencies. So when we present to S&P and Moody's, we do spend some time on the government-wide financials, on the net position pieces. We'll say that years back, probably 13 years ago, 12 years ago, Moody's came out with a statement and a sort of a policy recommendation on how they reviewed net pension liability, as well as OPEB pieces. And so that's been very helpful for us as we present to Moody's every time that we issue bonds. So as we issued bonds in 2025, early this year, we did spend some time speaking with Moody's and S&P. So that's really another way in which we need to use this information.
That's a good point, Aaron. So the other item that Aaron just mentioned was the net OPEB liability. I bring this up because otherwise you don't normally hear the words OPEB, which stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. That relates to the healthcare subsidy that's provided to retirees. So this is part of the para benefits. While you have the 1.02% employer contribution, that gets combined in with the other para contribution. So it's not something that shows up separately. It really, for all intents and purposes, looks like the pension contribution. So that's what this relates to. If we look at it, while you know, a little over $10 million is not a small number compared to the net pension liability. It's, you know, a very small number, but did want to bring that up again, since there's so many pages of required disclosures about it. That's what this relates to. Okay, so kind of switching gears to then the financial statement results for fund balance. This is going to be closer mirroring the budget. So this is kind of the ending balance that's able to be carried over into the next year for budget purposes. This would be similar to what you may refer to as a reserve. Did have this broken out if you into two different colors. The lighter kind of greenish color relates to the building fund. Most of this fund balance is going to be debt proceeds. So if you kind of look at that balance, you'll see that in fiscal year 19, it was very significant with a lot of bond proceeds still sitting in cash. And then that slowly gets spent down as those bond projects are completed. And then in fiscal year 2025, another 186 million, including premium, was issued. And so that's where that additional amount comes in. So if you were to look at this kind of without the different colors, it looks like, oh, you know, there's kind of been a dip through the years, but really that's just the spending down of those bond proceeds. If we look at the kind of darker bars on there, those would be outside of bond proceeds. And you can see that that has been increasing over the last 7 years, with fiscal year 2025 being right around the same amount as the end of fiscal year 2024. So I realize this is probably a lot more familiar in terms of kind of the budget numbers that you'd see in a more regular basis, but this is kind of what you'd see in the annual financial statements as of June 2025. Any, I guess before we move to the single audit, any questions or comments? I realize I have 3 slides covering 100+ pages of financial information, so it's a lot left in there, but I'll pause again if there's any questions, comments on financial statement results.
So the general fund's looking okay?
I don't have in here the percentage. I don't know, Aaron or Gina, if you'd like to kind of comment on your thoughts on that.
Yes, Bob, the general fund still looks good. We're getting fantastic feedback from both S&P and Moody's on our fund balance position in the general fund. We have set aside reserves or assigned fund balance related to risk, curriculum, as well as our device refresh on IT, which all 3 of those protect against ups and downs in spending or sort of arbitrary declines, but also ensures that we have money set aside for those potential events. And then within the fund balance, then we're now actually, we believe, fully reserved or near fully reserved in our multi-year obligations. Those are related to the post-employment retirement benefits that we provide. We no longer provide them. They were phased out and grandfathered, but we now believe we're near fully reserved there. And of course, we're fully reserved in our normal TABOR reserve. So TABOR includes both the multi-year obligation and the standard TABOR reserve. And so the fact that we are fully reserved in our multi-year obligation, we have very strategic set-asides, as well as meeting the board's requirement for unassigned fund balance. So in all, I think we're actually in a very strong position.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And I'll just add to that. Aaron has done an excellent job in looking at different areas that we should consider reserving fund balance for. And so I expect next year in this report that we might talk about some additional reserves that we're looking at, for example, in planning bus purchases. And so having those monies set aside so that in, let's pretend 3 years, we need to buy 5 buses. We're not going, oh gosh, we need $1.2 million. We've been setting money aside so that we're able to do that and it not be a 1-year crisis. And so that is some really great work that Aaron has done, and our superintendent and cabinet team have really appreciated, and I'm confident the board also would, we don't really highlight and talk about that a ton, but I think that type of planning, when we go to the ratings calls, the rating agencies really appreciate that thoughtfulness and planning. So I wanted to highlight the work Aaron's done on that.
And I would just say further, one extra piece is that we talk about volatility, but what Gina mentioned is predictable volatility. And when we know predictive volatility, it's really imperative for us in our fiduciary responsibilities to ensure that we're ready to go for that volatility. And I think if we don't, it does cause and can cause governments to then have to make more drastic decisions than they would otherwise, whether it be taking a fund balance really low or not having reserves set aside for capital or something like that. So what I would say is this is really all about predictive volatility. Pretty
Thank
sure
you.
I just made that up. Okay. All right, John Paul. Single
good.
audit.
I just made a note to add predictive volatility to some of my comments later. But so, okay, the single audit, again, this relates to the required audit procedures over federal awards. The district received around $33 million in federal awards in 2025. The major programs that are listed here, those are the ones that are required to be tested. So that's basically any of the significant awards that the district receives are going to be tested on a 3-year kind of rotating basis. Anytime there's ones that are more significant than they were in previous years, then they would kind of go into that cycle as well. And so you'll see the Refugee and Entrant Assistance Award. That is one that is not normally one of the more significant ones, but because it was a little bit larger this year than in previous years, that was selected as a major program. And so that's the one that we're still working through to kind of get the last bit completed so that we can have that probably done in January and submitted well before that end of March deadline for the federal government to receive the report. So that's kind of the big picture view on the single audit. Again, at this point, there's no findings that are expected, knowing that, again, we do need to finish the last little bit before we can say for certainty that that there's nothing that will be reported relating to the single audit. Okay, and so then we do also have what we refer to as our governance communication. So this was a a letter addressed to the Board of Education that outlines all of the required communication. Basically, auditing standards say you have to tell the board or the governing board these specific items at the end of the audit, and so it really just outlines all of that. Most of the wording is very templated. Again, trying to meet the exact requirements of the auditing standards, but I'll highlight a couple of items in here. The first is there was a change in governmental accounting standards relating to compensated absences. So this was across the country. Everyone was required to implement this. Compensated absences refers to time off. So vacation, sick, PTO, that type of thing would be what would be included within this. This does not change the district's benefits or what's provided to employees. What this changes is the methodology for determining what that liability in terms of the dollar amount is, how that's presented on the financial statements. So after analyzing the change that was implemented for this year, the overall impact was not significant. But it was something that was significant enough to mention in the letter, but it didn't really have that big of an impact on the actual amount that the district presented. The other area that I'd highlight on here is the uncorrected and corrected misstatements sections. So pleased to be able to say that we did not have any misstatements identified during the audit. And so we can get to that unmodified or clean audit opinion, but sometimes there's some adjustments or things that need to be fixed through the audit process to be able to get to that point. But in this case, pleased to be able to say that we did not have any audit adjustments. So that's really a very good indication that the audit went very smoothly. And so again, kudos to Gina and Aaron for keeping very good records, having good processes for everything so that when we start the audit, everything is in good shape. Again, number of other items that are all required to be included in the governance communication. The one thing that I'll highlight in here, as has been the case in previous financial statements, but the annual comprehensive financial report does include the district's charter schools, even though those are run independently and the finances are managed separately from the rest of the district. Because the district has oversight, those charter school financial information that gets included in separate columns within the district's financials, those were audited by other auditors, and so we're relying on their audits in order to include those within the district. So we didn't do those charter school audits, but it still is included within the district's financial statements. So that's all I have for the discussion. Again, a very clean and smooth audit, completed on time, and on track to have the single audit completed prior to that deadline as well. So overall, no real significant concerns to be brought up, but I'll pause one more time if there's any questions, comments, discussions, other things we want to talk about.
I'll just say, Gina and Aaron, to you and your team, an outstanding job. Great job having these results. That's having gone through multiple audits and having done many audits. I know how hard it is to get to this position. And I would also like to say thank you to John Paul for the work that you and CLA did on the audit. So
thank you.
Yeah, we just don't tell anybody how much fun we have when we do it, because we want people to make sure they understand that this was a lot of hard work. When we sit back and we just enjoy life. One further thing that I would mention, John Paul mentioned adjustments or changes in GASB standards. The other standards that we do take a look at from time to time are any proposed statements on auditing standards. And I just wanted to let the FAC know that there is a proposed statement on auditing standards that relate to fraud in an audit of the financial statements. And Gina and I are working very diligently to look through that auditing standard. GFOA made comments, GASB made comments, and all of those sounded as if they didn't really have a lot of disagreements, and that I would think that auditing standard would eventually come through. Where Gina and I are working with Cabinet on is making sure that we get all the information out to principals, bookkeepers, office managers, etc. And then one of the potential big things, John Paul mentioned the internal controls, is that where we want to make sure we're doing an exceptional job is not only documenting those internal controls, but the auditing standards work a lot now towards that we're verifying, doing a lot of documentation on verification, that we've done spot checks or we've done interviews or anything that's related to our internal controls, that we're actually talking to the right people, the people responsible for those pieces of the job, and being able to, for lack of a better word, prove that we have been checking on those internal controls, and that we can show our auditors that that's been there. Further to Bob's comment, I do thank John Paul. This is, I think, our third audit together. Though CLA has certainly been with the district for quite some time, and one of the things that John Paul lets me do is pontificate, so I appreciate that. You don't know if he listens to me, but I do appreciate it. And I think that very much appreciate John Paul and his team's work this year. CLA has done some reorganization in how they allocate work, and both how they utilize their national network as well as their Denver network. And I appreciate his dedication to meeting our timeline. Gina and I want to issue as quickly as possible after the end of the fiscal year, and we keep, I think, getting better and better. I think we've looked at quite a few of our prior audit opinions, and I do believe this is one of the earliest that we've ever issued. And so that is due to John Paul, his team, the stability of his team, and just the communication that we have back and forth. So appreciate that very much.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that.
And Aaron, I think we are out of time.
Great.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, John Paul. And now we'll stop.